Hi, welcome back to tonight's reading of the Mowgli's Tales. We stopped at page 270 and I'll continue from the same spot, only I'll go back a paragraph to have a recap. We are at the spot where Abdul Ghaffur has been caught doing something very seriously wrong, and so Abdul Ghaffur's jaw dropped and he twisted up his waistcoat, staring at Mowgli. Are they his devils? His devils? And I had thought to catch him and blame him for all this. That was well thought of, Huzur. But before we make a trap, we see first how big the game is that may fall into it. Now I thought no more than that a man had taken one of the Sahib's horses. I did not know that the design was to make me a thief before the Sahib, or my devils had held you here by the leg. It is not too late now. So Gafur says that that was well thought of, but I had thought I had before making a trap, we always see how big the game is and that may fall into it. Now, I thought no more than that a man had taken one of the Sahib's horses. I did not know that the design was to make me a thief before the Sahib, or my devils had held you here by the leg. It is not too late now. Mowgli looked inquiringly at Gisborne, but Abdul Ghaffur waddled hastily to the white mare, scrambled on her back, and fled, the woodways crashing and echoing behind him. So the guilty man runs away. That was well done, said Mowgli, but he will fall again unless he holds by the mane. Now it is time to tell me what all these things mean, said Gisborne, a little sternly. What is this talk of your devils? How can men be driven up and down the rook like cattle? Give me an answer. So Mowgli says, is Sahib angry because I have saved him the money? No, said Gisborne, but there is this trick work in this that does not please me. Because Mowgli had, by his cleverness, caught Abdul Ghaffur and made his horse turn back so that Ghaffur got so frightened that the devil was at work. So he came, as soon as the horse entered back to the presence of Gisborne, Abdul Ghaffur ran up to him and gave him all the money which he had stolen. So, is the Sahib angry because I have saved him his money? No, no, but this trick work in this, that does not please me, says Gisborne. So Mowgli says, very good. Now, if I rose and stepped 3 paces into the rook, there is no one, not even the Sahib, who can find me till I choose. As I would not willingly do this, so I would not willingly tell you. Have a little patience, Sahib, and some day I will show you everything. For if you will, some day we will drive the buck together. There is no devil work in the matter at all. Only I know the rook as a man knows the cooking place in his house. So Mowgli knows the rook and every animal tree and everything absolutely perfectly. Mowgli was speaking as he would speak to an impatient child. Gisborne, puzzled, baffled, and a great deal annoyed, said nothing, but stared on the ground and thought. When he looked up, the man of the woods had gone. Mowgli had gone. It is not good, said a level voice from the thicket, for friends to be angry. Wait till the evening, Sahib, when the air cools. Left to himself, thus, dropped as it so, Mowgli is not in front of him, Gisborne, but he is behind somewhere, and he says it is not good for friends to be angry. Wait till the end, Sahib, and when the air will become cool. So Mowgli vanishes. Left to himself thus, dropped as it were in the heart of the rook, Gisborne swore, then laughed, remounted his pony, and rode on. He visited a ranger's hut, overlooked a couple of new plantations, left some orders as to the burning of a patch of dry grass, and set out for a camping ground of his own choice, a pile of splintered rocks roughly roofed over with branches and leaves, not far from the banks of the Kanye stream. It was twilight when he came in sight of his resting place, and the rook was waking up to the hushed, ravenous life of the night. A campfire flickered on the knoll, and there was the smell of a very good dinner in the wind. Said Gisborne. That's better than cold meat at any rate. Now, the only man who would be likely to be here would be Muller, and officially he ought to be looking over the Changamanga rock. Suppose that's why he's on my ground. So Muller is the boss, high up in the hierarchy of the forest officials, and Gisborne is way down. So the gigantic German who was the head of the woods and forests of all India, head ranger from Burma to Bombay, had a habit of flitting bat like without warning from one place to another and turning up exactly where he was least looked for. His theory was that sudden visitations, the discovery of shortcomings, and a word of mouth upbraiding of a subordinate were infinitely better than the slow processes of correspondence which might end up in a written and official reprimand, a thing in after years to be counted against a forest officer's record. So those things are very slow moving, and he did not like that. He preferred the quick and immediate action. As he explained, if I only talk to my boys, like a Dutch uncle, they say, it was only that damned old Muller, and they do better next time. But if my fat head clerk, if he writes to say that Muller, Inspector General, failed to understand and is much annoyed, first, that does no good because I am not there. And second, the food that comes after me, he may say to my best boys, look here, you have been wigged by my predecessor. I tell you, the big brass hat business does not make the trees grow. So Miller was against all this uh, official protocol. Muller's deep voice was coming out of the darkness behind the firelight as he bent over the shoulders of his pet cook. Not so much sauce, you son Belia. Worcester sauce is a condiment, not a fluid. Gisborne, you have come to a very bad dinner. Where's your camp? And he walked up to shake hands with Gisborne. So Gisborne has come to Muller's camp. I'm the camp, sir, said Gisborne. I don't know where you were about here. So Gisborne did not know that Mueller was there. He smelled something, so he came looking at it and he walked into Mueller's camp. Mueller looked at the young man's trim figure. Good, that's very good. One horse and some cold things to eat. When I was young, I did my camp also like that. Now you shall dine with me. I went into headquarters to make up my report last month. I have written half, and the rest I leave to my clerks and come out for a walk. The government is mad about these reports. I told the viceroy so at Shimla. Gisborne chuckled, remembering the many tales that were told of Miller's conflicts with the supreme government. He was the chartered libertine of all the offices, for as a forest officer, he had no equal. If I find you, Gisborne, sitting in your bungalow and hatching reports to me about the plantations instead of writing the plantations, I will transfer you to the middle of the Bikaner desert to reforest it. I am sick of reports and chewing paper when we should be doing our work, said Mueller. There's not much danger of my wasting time over my annual reports, said Gisborne. I hate them as much as you do. So the talk went over at this point to professional matters. Mueller had some questions to ask, and Gisborne orders and hints to receive till dinner was ready. It was the most civilized meal Gisborne had eaten for months. No distance, no distance to the base of supplies was allowed to interfere with the work of Mueller's cook, and that table spread in the wilderness began with devilled small freshwater fish and ended with coffee and cognac. Ah, said Mueller at the end, with a sigh of satisfaction, as he lighted a cheroot and dropped into his much worn camp chair. When I am making reports, I am free thinker and atheist. But here in the Rook, I am more than a Christian. I am a pagan also. He rolled the cheroot butt luxuriously under his tongue, dropped his hands on his knees, and stared before him into the dim, shifting heart of the Rook, full of stealthy noises, the snappings of twigs like the snapping of the fire behind him, the sigh and rustle of a heat-bended branch recovering from her straightness in the cool night, recovering her straightness in the cool night, the incessant mutter of the Kanye stream, and the undertone of the many peopled grass uplands out of sight beyond a swell of the hill. He blew out a thick puff of smoke and began to quote Heine to himself. Yes, it is very good, very good. Yes, I work miracles, and by God, they come off too. I remember when there was no rook more big than your knee from here to the ploughlands, and in the drought time the cattle ate bones of dead cattle up and down. Now the trees have come back. They were planted by a free thinker because he knows just the cause that made the effect. But the trees, they had the cult of the old gods and the Christian gods howl loudly. They could not live in the rook Gisborne. A shadow moved in one of the bridle paths, moved and stepped out into the starlight. I have said true. Hush! Here is Faunus himself come to see the Inspector General. Himmel. He is the god. Look. It was Mowgli, crowned with his wreath of white flowers and walking with a half peeled branch. Mowgli, very mistrustful of the firelight and ready to fly back to the thicket on the least alarm. That's a friend of mine, said Gisborne. He's looking for me. Oh, hey, Mowgli. So Miller had barely time to gasp before the man was at Gisborne's side, crying, I was wrong to go, I was wrong to go. But I did not know then that the mate of him that was killed by the river was awake and looking for you. Else I would not have gone away. She tracked you from the back range, Sahib. So Gisborne had shot that tiger, and that tiger's mate has been has been uh, has been what is that trailing him. I did not know that the mate of him that was killed by the river was looking for Gisborne. I should not have got away. She tracked you from the back range, Sahib. He's a little mad, said Gisborne, and he speaks of all the beasts about here as if he were a friend of theirs. Of course, of course. If Fanus does not know, who should know? Mueller said gravely. What does he say about tigers? This God who knows you so well. Gisborne relighted his cheroot, and before he had finished the story of Mowgli and his exploits, it was burned down to mustache edge. Mueller listened without interruption. That is not madness, he said at last, when Gisborne had described the driving of Abdul Ghaffur. That is not madness at all. What is it then? He left me in a temper this morning because I asked him to tell me how he did it. I fancy the chap is possessed in some way, said Gisborne. No, 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 there is no possession, said Mueller. But it is most wonderful. Normally they die young, these people. And you say now that your thief servant did not say what drove the pony. And of course, the Nil guy could not speak. So how did they come? No, no, but confound it, says Gisborne. There wasn't anything. I listened and I can hear most things. The bull and the man simply came headlong, mad with fright. So Gisborne tells only what he saw, and Mueller is saying there's more to it. For answer, Mueller looked Mowgli up and down from head to foot, then beckoned him nearer. He came as a bug treads a tainted trail, very warily. There's no harm, said Mueller in vernacular. Hold out an arm. So Mowgli held out his arm, and Mueller ran his hand down to the elbow, felt that, and nodded. So I thought. Now the knee. So Gisborne saw him feel the kneecap and smile. Two or three white scars just above the ankle caught his eyes. Those came when you were very young, he said. Yes, Mowgli answered with a smile. They were love tokens from the little ones, the little wolf cubs. And Mowgli was suckling the mother's milk. That time the little cubs had bitten him love bites. Then to Gisborne over his shoulder, this Sahib knows everything. Who is he? That comes after, my friend. Now where are they? Said Mueller. Mowgli swept his hand around his head in a circle. So you can drive Nilgai? See, there is my mare in her pickets. Can you bring her to me without frightening her? So Mueller is testing Mowgli. Can I bring the mare to the Sahib without frightening her? Mowgli repeated, raising his voice a little above its normal pitch. What is more easy if the heel ropes are loose? So loosen the head and the heel pegs, shouted Mueller. Mueller told his servant to loosen the head and heel pegs of the horse. To the groom, they were hardly out of the ground before the mare, a huge black Australian, flung up her head and cocked her ears. Careful, I do not wish her driven into the rook, said Miller. Mowgli stood still, fronting the blaze of the fire, in the very form and likeness of that Greek god who is so lavishly described in the novels. The mare whickered, drew up one hind leg, found that the heel ropes were free, and moved swiftly to her master, on whose bosom she dropped her head, sweating lightly. So, what he's asked for has been done. She came of her own accord. My horses will do that, cried Gisborne. Feel if she sweats, said Mowgli. Gisborne laid a hand on the damp flag. It is enough, said Mowgli. It is enough, Mowgli repeated, and a rock behind him threw back the word. That's uncanny, isn't it? Said Gisborne. So they are surprised and shocked that Mowgli can do that much. No, only wonderful, most wonderful. Still you do not know, Gisborne. I confess I don't, says Gisborne. Well, then I shall not tell. He says that some day he will show you what it is. It would be cruel if I told. But why he is not dead, I do not understand. Now listen, you, Mueller faced Mowgli and returned to the vernacular in their language, forest language. I am the head of all the rooks in the country of India and the others across the black water, the Kalapani. I do not know how many men must be under me. Perhaps 5,000, perhaps 10,000. Your business is this, to wander no more up and down the rook and to drive beasts for sport or for show, but to take service under me, who am the government in the matter of woods and forests, and to live in this rook as a forest guard, to drive the villagers' goats away when there is no order to feed them in the rook, and to admit them when there is an order. To keep down, as you can keep down the boar and the nilgai when they become too many. To tell Gisborne Sahib how and where the tigers move and what there is in the forest, and to give sure warning of all the fires in the rook, for you can give warning more quickly than any other. For that work, there is a payment each month in silver. And at the end, when you have gathered a wife and a castle, and cattle, and maybe children, a pension. What answer? That was Mueller asking Mowgli, an offer of a job and a pension and all that. So Gisborne began, that's just what I. But he's cut off. My sahib spoke this morning of such a service, says Mowgli. I walked all day alone, considering the matter, and my answer is ready here. I serve, if I serve in this rook and no other, with Gisborne Sahib and with no other. So Mowgli is very clear that okay, he'll agree, but he'll work only in this rook and with Gisborne and with no other. It shall be so, says Mueller. In a week comes the written order that pledges the honor of the government for the pension. After that, you will take up your hut where Gisborne Sahib shall appoint. So you take up a hut. I was going to speak to you about it, says Gisborne to Mueller. Did not want to be told when I saw that man. There will never be a forest guard like him. He is a miracle, I tell you. Gisborne, someday you will find it so. Listen, he is blood brother to every beast in the rook. I shall be easier in my mind if I could understand him, says Gisborne. That will come. Now I tell you that only once in my service, and of these 30 years, have I met a boy that began as this man began, and he died. Sometimes you hear of them in the census reports, that's all. But this man has lived, and he is an anachronism, for he is here before the Iron Age and the Stone Age. Look here, he is at the beginning of the history of mankind. Adam in the garden, and now he only wants an Eve. So Mueller is comparing Mowgli to Adam in the garden, and now he only wants an Eve. No, he is older than the child tale, uh, as the rook is older than the gods. This one, I'm a pagan now, once and for all. Through the rest of the long evening, Mueller sat smoking and staring into the darkness, his lips moving in multiplied quotations and great wonder upon his face. He went to his tent, but presently came out again in his majestic pink sleeping unit, and the last words that Gisborne heard him address to the rook through the deep hush of midnight were these, that you sleep and good night. So we stop there. Thank you. This is page 277 bottom. Thank you. Bye.